A victory at Old Trafford will never not be satisfying. Was it vintage Arsenal? No, not really. Is there a lot to improve on? Of course there is. But the Gunners have started their season with 3 points. And what more, really, could you ask for on the opening weekend? We're going to dissect Arsenal's 1-0 win up at Old Trafford on today's episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. Let's get into it. Hey, everybody. Good morning and welcome back to another episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. With me, your host, Harry Symeou, coming to you the morning after the afternoon before. Oh, I forget every time how bad that drive is back from Manchester all the way down to London when you're tired, when you're sort of exhausted after a long day. I think we set off, the four of us, I think we set off at like something like 10 a.m. and there was traffic. And of course, we stopped at service stations or a service station on the way and one on the way back. And that obviously puts a bit of a delay in your journey as well. But you need it, don't you? You just need that breather. You need to get out, stretch your legs, grab a coffee, whatever. I realize we've got listeners in the States that will say, a 3.5 hour, 4 hour drive, that is absolutely nothing because they travel far greater distances. But for us, they're not really used to it. It is a bit of a pain in the arse. But look, delighted to have been there, honoured to have been there to witness Arsenal pick up their first 3 points of the season. And no matter how bad Man United are, no matter how far they fall, I will never, ever, ever not enjoy going and winning at Old Trafford. Because as a child growing up, Manchester United were our biggest rivals. Manchester United left me heartbroken on many, many occasions. So I'll always take lots of joy and satisfaction from any victories over them. Look, on today's pod, we're going to break it down into a number of different parts. We're going to share some overall thoughts on how the game went, the kind of takeaways from it. We're going to talk about some of the issues that Arsenal faced at Old Trafford, because although we won, it wasn't a game in which we played great football. It wasn't a game in which we looked particularly convincing. And I'm not seeking to overshadow or overplay the negatives to the point where we completely, avoid the positives, because there are positives as well. But I also think it's really, really important that if we're going to get up to the level whereby we can go on and win this Premier League title this season, we are going to have to improve dramatically. And so when we say this was an issue and that was an issue and this was a problem and that was a problem, we're not doing it from a perspective of everything is rubbish, it's all falling apart, and let's be doom and gloom 1 week into the season. It's because we all want to see that improvement. So I think Mikel Arteta and his side behind the scenes will be doing loads of work to try and rectify some of those issues and to improve the team moving forward. And I think it's right that as fans and as people sort of covering and analysing the team, that we highlight those issues as well, because if you don't highlight the problems, you can't fix them, then you won't get better. And then we stand next to zero chance of winning the Premier League, because what we saw yesterday was good enough to get a win at Old Trafford, but Man United are not going to be in the title picture. Man United are not going to be in the conversation for the big one come the end of the season. So, yeah. And also, this is a really good point, and it's been made in the chat a couple of times already. How many times over the years have we been to Old Trafford, played them off the park, been fantastic in 90% of what we did, but ended up coming away empty-handed? It's happened so many times over the years. It used to happen loads under Arsene Wenger, and it used to really, really frustrate me. Or you're playing well, and then Man United get a penalty. Or you're playing well, and then there's a questionable decision. It happened to us so many times over the years that if we're going to go and shithouse our way to victories at Old Trafford every single season, I'm absolutely fine with that. As I say, look, hardly vintage Arsenal, but we will take it. All of Arsenal's 6 away wins at Old Trafford against Man United in Premier League history have been 1-0s, which I think is interesting. And Man United have gone winless in 6 successive Premier League games against Arsenal now for the first time ever. So that shows you that the run we're on against them, it's really, really impressive. And it shows you that the balance has completely shifted, because for a long time, Manchester United were the team to beat. Yes, 97, 98, we were able to topple them. 2001, 2002, we were able to topple them. 2003, 2004, we were able to topple them then as well. And we did it as invincibles, an unbelievable campaign. But other than that, Man United, have been the much more successful side in the Premier League. And so when you read a stat like that, Man United have gone winless against Arsenal in 6 successive Premier League games. It's the first time that's happened ever in Premier League history. It kind of shines a light on the fact that we've really kind of overtaken them and left them in our shadow. We'll talk, as I say, about some of the issues, some of the shortcomings, and obviously we'll try and round it back up and finish on a more positive note, because I think you have to take the positives. Opening weekend of the season, you go away to Old Trafford, really horrible fixture on paper. We kept talking about it in the build-up. You've seen Liverpool win, albeit unconvincingly. You've seen Manchester City win really convincingly. Those are the two teams, aren't they, that you're really kind of looking at as the teams to beat if we're going to win this Premier League title. And then there's us going to Old Trafford, which was undoubtedly the hardest game that any of the title contenders faced. If you want to include Chelsea in the equation, they played Crystal Palace at home. So we undoubtedly had the toughest fixture. We've got Liverpool on the horizon. It's not long before we play Newcastle and City. We kind of needed to win this, and we did. And it wasn't great, and it wasn't vintage Arsenal, but we got it. So enjoy it, but also be well aware of the problems, the issues, the shortcomings, so that we can fix them and make sure that we are far better equipped moving forward. Look, before we dive into breaking down certain aspects of the game, if I could just remind you, if you're with us on YouTube right now, don't forget to leave a like on the video, not in the chat box, on the video itself, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Click the little bell and you'll get notifications every time we go live or release a new episode. And as we enter the live stream today, we are just 30 subscribers away, 30, from hitting that 45,000 mark on our YouTube channel, which is just amazing. If you could help us get over the line ASAP, I'd be super, super grateful. Right, let's kick off with the team then that Mikel picked. So Mikel went with Raya in goal, White at right back, which I expected, because White has been far more prominent during pre-season. Obviously, Julian Timber had that surgery at the back end of last season and wasn't ready for the start of pre-season. So he's a little bit behind. He went with White at right back. Then he went Saliba, Gabriel, and Calafiori across the rest of the back line. The Calafiori inclusion was one that I think divided opinion pre-game. Speaking to friends and sort of fellow Arsenal fans and stuff, there was a lot of people that thought, yeah, bring Calafiori in. Calafiori is chaos. Calafiori causes the opposition problems. That's what he does. And away at Old Trafford, against a team that are weaker than us on paper anyway, we should be fine. And actually, Calafiori just brings a completely different dynamic to any other left-back option that we have. I personally, I said it going into the game, would have played Timber at left back or Lewis Skelly, because I felt that we needed to be a little bit more defensively robust. I expected Man United to come out of the traps quickly. They did. I expected the atmosphere at Old Trafford to be brilliant, and it was. I think the thing with Old Trafford is that people have this kind of, this idea that, when you go to the bigger grounds, the bigger clubs, the atmospheres are a little bit flat. And that is often the case, but not for a game like this one. And whatever you say about the United fans, okay, they might not be happy with what they've seen in recent times. Why would they be? They've fallen so far. The standards are not what they used to be. But ultimately, what you cannot deny is that the Man United faithful, at least those that go to Old Trafford, they are always behind their team. And you really felt that yesterday. And that's in part, I think, why we struggled so much in the early stages of the game. You move into the midfield, he went with what we would all regard on paper as Arsenal's best midfield right now. Zubimendi, Odegaard, and Rice. Saka played on the right. Martinelli played on the left, and Viktor Gyökeres led the line. There was some question marks around whether Gyökeres would start the game. I kind of always felt he would, but that Kai Havertz would finish it. That proved to be the case. Martinelli getting the nod on the left again. I'm not sure that really worked for us, if I'm being completely honest. And it's not for the first time, and it's a conversation that we'll have a little bit later on in the pod, I am sure. But let's begin by talking about some of Arsenal's early issues, because there were issues. And actually, you could make the case that we were lucky not to concede in that first period. So let's get into that now. Okay, so you go to Old Trafford. Man United come out of the traps fast. It's fast, it's frantic. The atmosphere's lively. They're up for it. They've got new signings. There's an optimism. There's an excitement. What do you have to do in order to weather that early storm? Well, you need to settle. You need to settle nice and quickly. You need to play your game. You need to show composure. And for me, in the early stages of the game, Arsenal showed zero composure, zero signs of settling down. And we actually made life much more difficult than it needed to be. We gave Manchester United encouragement. And as a result of that, I thought we were quite lucky to go in at the break having not conceded. Specifically, what am I talking about? I didn't think we won enough of our duels. I think Man United looked sharper, looked fitter. I remember sort of sitting there in the press box during the game and thinking to myself, okay, they're winning the duels now. They're getting to the second balls first. They're picking up the loose balls quicker than us. They're stronger in the challenge than us on most, in most cases and in most examples. But they can't sustain this level of energy for 90 minutes. You always felt like there was going to be a drop-off from Man United, but it was important that we weathered that storm. We were sloppy in possession, misplaced passes galore. We were trying silly passes. We should have recognized really early on in the game that we were up against it. And, you know, we talk about Arsenal being risk averse at times. And sometimes we say under Mikel Arteta that they're too risk averse, right? But what you needed to see today was a bit of that. You needed to see us just put our foot on the ball. I say today, yesterday, and slow things down at that point in the game. And we just didn't do it. We were too quick to try and play sort of those forward passes, I felt, in those scenarios and in those instances. And it sounds kind of contradictory to what I've been saying all summer, which is we need to play those attacking passes and those progressive passes earlier. But under those circumstances, in that situation, I think sometimes you just need to put your foot on the ball and slow things down and slowly build up to your rhythm and slowly build up to the point where you're confident and you have the platform to go on and try and play that type of game. I thought we were way too quick to commit bodies forwards without having good quality possession. Does that make sense? Like, you get the ball at right back or you get the ball at centre back and it goes into the midfield and straight away Ben White's on his bike and he's charging down the right-hand side. It was happening on the left as well, although Calafiori's runs are a little bit different. He tends to go further in field. But basically, we were throwing bodies forward before we had a good quality of possession, which meant that there was a high chance of a turnover. And if you've thrown those bodies forward really quickly and really early, when that turnover happens, you're then backpedaling, you've got players out of position and you're struggling. We never marshaled the wide areas anywhere near well enough in that first half. Man United used those wide areas to really, really good effect. You know, they used the wing backs. They used Mbeumo and Cunha and gave them the kind of license to drift out wide in terms of their starting positions to run down the sides of our centre backs. And you've got to remember that when Arsenal are in possession and those turnovers happen, the first thing that happens is we've got to get back into shape because we morph from a back four into a back three because Calafiori often goes wandering. And I'm not wanting to have a go at Riccardo Calafiori. It's clearly something that Mikel Arteta asks of his left back to be more forward thinking, to get into certain areas, etc., etc. Whether it's Rice, whether it's MLS, whether it's Calafiori, whether it's Timber, you see the same thing, right? So it's a tactical thing, clearly. But because we were narrow with the three defenders to not leave those big distances sort of in the central areas, because you don't want a big distance between Saliba and White, and you don't want a big distance between Saliba and Gabriel, we had to stay narrow and compact, but that meant that it took time for us to get out to those wide areas where Man United were going out there really quickly and really early at every possible opportunity. So we struggled with that. I thought in the first half that Declan Rice and Martin Zubimendi were a complete non-entity. And I don't want to sit here and say, you know, they were both really, really poor. I think this was more a tactical thing than a lack of application or a lack of effort from any of those two players. I think that Man United recognized and realized that with the midfield they had, they would probably be outplayed. They would probably be outfought and outrun. And so their plan was to bypass that midfield. Rather than play through the middle third of the pitch, it was get it out wide as early as you possibly can. Get it out to Dorgu, get it out to Dallo, get it out to Ahmad when he came onto the pitch. Go long, go into the channels for Mbeumo, go into the channels for Cunha, Hit those guys as early as you possibly can. Don't try and play the tiki-taka through the midfield because Arsenal will beat you at that. And so it felt to me like, as I say, Zubimendi and Rice were a complete non-entity and were completely out of the game. They didn't give us control in possession in that first period, but they also didn't give us any control out of possession, because whenever we were defending, whenever we were running back to our own goal, it was mainly because Man United had tried to expose us in a wide area. There was one instance, I think, where Cunha somehow bundled his way through about 3 or 4 challenges in a central area. Was it Cunha or Mbuma? I can't remember, but they ended up sort of getting through and having a pretty tame effort in the end. But I just felt like our midfield in that first period was completely and totally ineffective. So those were the issues for me. Those were the problems that we experienced in that first half of the game. And then, of course, the goal. Now, these issues that I've just described, I'm not necessarily doing this in chronological order because they did continue after the goal, I felt. But the goal was significant. The goal was significant in a number of ways, and I'll explain why. The goal was significant because Manchester United had turned up full of optimism, full of excitement. Their fans were right up for it. And I'm not saying that they stopped supporting their team after we scored, but it did take the wind out of their sails for a little bit because they were building, and then Set Piece FC pop up and basically deal you with a big blow, put themselves in front. And people know now we have this aura about us as a defensive unit anyway, that once we get in front, it's very, very difficult to sort of peg us back, and it's very, very difficult to go on and win the game. In terms of the goal, the delivery comes in, and there's a lot of complaints from Manchester United about William Saliba, his positioning, and what he did in terms of, in their eyes, preventing Altay Bayindir from coming out and getting something strong on the ball. William Saliba's done nothing wrong. He's held his ground. He stood in that position. It's on the defender, I think, to protect the goalkeeper with his positioning. That didn't happen. The defender wasn't strong enough. And Bayindir is not a very good goalkeeper. And over the course of this game, you saw the difference between the two goalkeepers. You had David Raya, who came out and dominated in pretty much every single crossing situation, versus Bayindir, who looked shaky every time, who wasn't strong enough, who wasn't powerful enough. When I've been doing sort of pre-season predictions and we've been talking about Man United on various other platforms, I keep saying, yes, and Mbeumo and Cunha, great. Benjamin Sesko might even turn out to be great for you as well. But what you failed to address is two of the big problem areas that they had last season. They don't have a solid goalkeeper. And you can say, oh, well, Onana would have done better. I don't think he would have. So they haven't solved that. And they haven't solved their problem in the midfield for me. That's why they're bypassing it. That's why they're playing in different ways. But the goalkeeping thing is a big problem because they've literally had goalkeepers at Manchester United over the last couple of years that have thrown the ball into the back of their own net, that are causing them all sorts of problems. So we score the goal. They're complaining. They think it's a foul. It was never a foul in a million years. Not even a debate, not even a discussion. Another controversial moment I have to address that happened in the second half was when they had a penalty appeal as Cunha was challenged by William Saliba. Again, I don't think it was a penalty, but I think if you're a Man United fan, you would feel that you have a case. And yeah, you have a case. But I think when you really break it down, when you slow it down, when you watch it very, very closely, what you'll find is that Saliba doesn't actually make a challenge on Cunha. Cunha gets across Saliba, and I think is looking for it. Now, I'm not calling him a cheat or a diver. I think that that's what strikers do and should do. And they're trying to lure a mistake out of the defender in order to try and win a penalty or something. There were big appeals. Again, play was waved on. And I don't think there was enough in that for the VAR to be able to overturn it. So in terms of those two big controversial decisions, I think they were right in the end. Some of the little decisions, though, I mean, Simon Hooper was just completely out of control. Like, Man United, overly physical at times, commit fouls. It's absolutely fine. Someone in Arsenal colours goes in and makes a semi-strong challenge, and it's a problem. It's an issue, and we got to blow the whistle and we got to stop play. It was one of those performances, and I heard Clive Palmer say this on the Arsenal Vision instant reaction, and I thought this was absolutely bang on. It was just the performance that a referee can be guilty of falling into the trap of when it comes to refereeing the home team. I felt that's what we saw from Simon Hooper. So, yeah, but look, we talked about the issues. We've talked about the struggles that we experienced in that first half. It did get better in the second half. We're going to talk about why, and we're going to discuss some individual performances as well before wrapping up. But I just want to remind you guys that today we start our brand new Patreon feature. This is the one you've been waiting for. We are going to bring you video analysis of Arsenal's victory up at Old Trafford. We're going to call it the 15-minute breakdown, or something like that. If anyone's got a better name, then please do let me know. But what we're going to do after every single Premier League game this season over on our Patreon page is we are going to pick a 15-minute period that taught us something, that showed us something. And it can be good or bad. In this case, we're going to pick the first 15 minutes of the game because I want to highlight all those issues that I've explained to you with the video, and we can go into those situations and scenarios in a lot more depth, and we can hopefully learn a little bit more about where Arsenal need to do better. I'm not trying to be Mr. Negative or paint a negative picture, but I thought that was a really kind of telling 15 minutes in the game. So we're going to focus on that. If it rolls on to 16, 17, 18 minutes sometimes to make sure that we capture all the key incidents, that will be the case. But we're starting that today on Patreon. I'm recording this right after we finish this live stream. So that will be with you probably by around about midday today. So if you're not a patron and you want to become one, now's a great time to join the club. New season, new content. We're stepping it up a level. Patreon.com/The Chronicles of Aguna. The link is in the description below. Head over and sign up. And as always, when we bring in a new format or we do something different, I want your feedback. So once you've heard it, have a listen. And yeah, check it out. Okay, let's move on. We're going to take a short pause, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the second half and some of those individual performances.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe.
That's right. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. Like and subscribe. Remember, we're very, very close to that 45,000 subscriber mark on YouTube. So if you haven't subscribed already, please do help us out there. Make sure you leave a like on the video as well, not the chat box, the video itself. Okay, second half. What changed? I think we got to grips a little bit more with what Manchester United were looking to do. We learned something. And that's really, really important. The ability to recognize problems going in a very short window during halftime and be able to rectify some of those issues. Were we perfect in the second half in terms of defensively? No, we weren't. Man United still had their moments. But listen, you go to Old Trafford, there are always going to be periods in the game that you're going to be up against it, where it's going to be difficult. You know, that's the nature of going somewhere like that. You're going to have your backs up against the wall at certain points. The key is, can you fight it? Can you hold on in there? Can you stay together? Can you stay united, excuse the pun, and get through it? And we did. We did. But we dealt with the wide threat a lot better. I thought that was the key to us improving in that second half. And I thought when Noni Madueke came on, we looked better on that left-hand side, not in an attacking sense. I don't think Noni Madueke contributed in an attacking sense, but it would be wrong to sort of highlight him and say that he was the issue, because he wasn't, right? We struggled in that sense and on that side of things throughout the game. And even Bukayo Saka, who can do no wrong in the eyes of so many, didn't look at his brilliant best and probably should have had a bigger impact over the course of the game than he did. But what I thought was interesting about Madueke's performance was, lots of people said to me, sort of when we signed him and when we were linked with him, he's lazy. He doesn't work back. He doesn't care for the team enough. It's all about him. He's a bit of an individual. And yes, he's tricky and he's all the rest of it. I don't think he was like amazing defensively, but he stuck to his job. I don't expect Noni Madueke to be a great 1v1 defender. And I think Ahmad would cause most natural defenders problems because he's quick, he's sharp, he's tricky. I was really surprised that he didn't start the game. I can only imagine that it was to do with his fitness. Madueke wasn't like great in terms of stopping him, because that's a really, really difficult thing to do. But you can't question Madueke's commitment to doing the job that he was put on the pitch to do. Every time I looked up, he was back. He was in the right position. He was supporting the fullback. What needed to happen at halftime for me was that we needed to get Riccardo Calafiori off the pitch. I love Riccardo Calafiori. I love what he brings to the table. I love what he brings to the team. And we'll talk about that in a bit more detail when we go on to the individual performances. But defensively, he can be a liability at times. Factor in that he was on a yellow card. And I thought we needed to make that change that saw MLS in the end come on. I thought we needed to do it earlier. Personally, I would have brought Timber on in that position just to solidify things. We were a goal to the good. And then you give your left winger a platform to go on and play from, right? You give your left winger the freedom of that left flank because you know you've got a great 1v1 defender, probably the best we have in terms of our fullback options in that position. So I'm not sitting here going, oh, you know, Madueke was great or trying to blow smoke up his backside, but he stuck to his job. And on a day where everybody was toothless in the final third, on a day where we lacked any spark, any creativity, it would be unfair to highlight him. I think he just ended up playing a bit like a left wing back and going like for like with what they had, which took away from him in an offensive sort of context. But I think he did a job for the team, and that was important. If we move on then to some of those individual performances, let's start with David Raya. David Raya was sensational for me. Made some really, really good saves. Came out and claimed crosses at times we were under pressure. Came out and made strong punches when we needed him to. The only thing with David Raya, I get that it's part and parcel of his game. Like some of his distribution is really, really risky. And there are just times where I'd prefer that we don't do that. There were times where he created transitional situations for us in our favor, where he sort of rolled the ball into midfield or pick someone out brilliantly in the way that not every goalkeeper can. And you see the positives of David Raya with either the ball at his feet or in his hands as he's looking to distribute. But there were times as well where you saw, you know, him maybe just dwell on the ball for slightly too long. He had that incident, that clash with Mbumo, didn't he, in the first half? Definitely not foul, but, you know, he was living very, very dangerously in that instance. I guess you take the risk in order to get the reward, and we get the reward a lot of the time with David Raya, so you have to tolerate and accept the risk. I think he was man of the match, if I'm not mistaken. I think Sky gave him the man of the match. You can understand why. And on a day where the two goalkeeping performances couldn't have been more contrasting, it really kind of shone a light, I thought, on how good he was. I want to talk about Martin Odegaard because I read a lot of stuff online at halftime about Martin Odegaard, a lot of criticism for him. Is he playing the right passes? His execution of those passes is not good enough. I thought Martin Odegaard was by a country mile the best of our three midfielders. Now, I think that Zubimendi struggled. I think that Rice struggled. He wasn't great on the day. But Martin Odegaard was winning the ball back. He was winning challenges. He was setting us off in those transitional situations. Did everything he tried come off? No, it didn't. But he was trying to make things happen. He was very, very vocal yesterday. You could see that. Maybe what was said about him over the course of last week just kind of lit a bit of a fire underneath his backside and kind of got him up for it and got him really going. But, you know, I think it was far from vintage Martin Odegaard. It wasn't his best display, no chance. But he was one of Arsenal's better players. And so if you were taking to social media yesterday and having a moan and having a bit of a meltdown online about some of those individual performances, you're within your rights because there were a few bad ones in terms of the standards that we've been used to or in terms of what the expectation around some of those players is. But Martin Odegaard was not the one yesterday that you should have been directing your frustrations at if you felt that the performance was a real cause for concern. Martin Odegaard was one of Arsenal's better players. Is he back at his best yet? No, he's not. Is there still a long way to go in that sense? Probably. But Martin Odegaard yesterday was one of Arsenal's better players. That was clear as day. And if you can't see that, I'm not really sure what you were watching. I got to be honest. Riccardo Calafiori talked about what he gives you in an attacking sense. He's unpredictable. He's aggressive. He makes runs infield and on the outside. And of course, he was in the right place at the right time to nod home and give Arsenal the lead and put Arsenal in a position where they went on to win the match. He was our match winner yesterday, but defensively, I still don't trust him. And I think that there's an issue here that Mikel has to find the balance around. You bring him in the team, you give us something different. You give us an extra bit of threat on our left-hand side. Does Mikel Arteta feel, okay, and this is an interesting question, does Mikel Arteta feel that he has to play Calafiori at left back, who offers us lots of attacking threat and unpredictability, because we don't have enough attacking threat in any of our left wing options? Is that why he chooses to go that way? Because from a defensive standpoint, it doesn't make any sense. You know, in theory, you go to Old Trafford, you want to keep it tight, you want to keep it compact, you want to be as defensively solid as you can. I would argue that of the three sort of realistic left-back options that we have right now, because Zinchenko doesn't seem to be in the picture too much at the minute, if you go through the options that we have, which are Miles Lewis-Skelly, Jurrien Timber moving over there, and then Riccardo Calafiori. Calafiori is the least solid defensively of any of those players. And that's wild because he was a centre-back before he came to Arsenal. So you'd think that defensively, that's where he would thrive. Instead, he's giving us unpredictability. He's causing chaos down the left-hand side. And it feels like to me, and we kept talking about the left-hand side in pre-season and the balance that you need to find. It feels to me like Mikel thinks, I'll stick Calafiori there, but it's got to be with Martinelli. We talked about combinations during pre-season, because if I play Calafiori and let him off the lead and let him go roaming, I know that Martinelli's got the defensive awareness and the physical capability of getting back and defending and helping us plug those holes. Is that the balance and the thinking behind picking that combination on Arsenal's left-hand side yesterday? I think it might have been. Let me know, of course, what you think on that. Viktor Gyökeres didn't have a great game. Didn't have a bad game either, though. He had a couple of moments. There was a cross in the first half. I think he was trying to pick out Calafiori on the edge of the penalty area. Didn't really work. In fact, he got it horribly, horribly wrong. It was a terrible cross. It went out for a throw-in on the far side. And some 15, 20 yards deeper than where Calafiori was positioned in the first place. He also had a moment in the second half where he picked the ball up in that kind of inside left channel. He tried to make something happen. Didn't really work. Got the ball caught under his feet. Ended up being forced wide and ended up losing the ball. But I think this is still a relationship issue. Like, I still think that, you know, we're not providing the service into him early enough. I saw him because I think, look, and I'm not dismissing the analysis of those that watched it on TV. No, I'm not doing that. But I think when you're there and you've got that bigger picture, you can see the whole pitch at all times rather than just what the television shows you. I think it was obvious that Viktor Gyökeres was making the runs into the channels that we've been talking about. We didn't pick him out early enough. We didn't work the ball into him quick enough. I thought that was a problem. He did come deep on a couple of occasions or stayed high, but pinned the centre half and won a few free kicks and a few fouls. I think it was kind of a bit of a baptism of fire for him in terms of the Premier League. I know he's played in England before, but Euro and De Ligt especially, were really, really physical with Gyökeres yesterday. And he had to stand his ground. But I think it's a combination of things, the reason as to why we didn't see the best of Viktor Gyökeres yesterday. First of all, we're not finding him early enough. The team lacked creativity in general, and he's a finisher, not a build-up player. So I think that was part of the issue. He's clearly not at 100% in terms of his fitness. Again, understandable because he's a little bit behind. Started preseason later than everybody else because of those delays in the transfer from Sporting. It was always going to be the case for me that Gyökeres was probably going to play an hour and that Havertz was going to come on and finish the game for us. But to be able to bring on someone like Havertz, who just came on and basically became a battering ram for us, winning free kicks galore, putting himself about defensively, sprinting back on occasions brilliantly, you know, it shows you that we've got that extra bit of depth, and obviously that was a real positive to take away. Martin Zubimendi, the game completely bypassed him for me. I thought he was better in the second half, and there were a few occasions on the edge of our box when we were defending where someone else might have just smashed the ball away and given it straight back to Manchester United, and we'd have then had to kind of batten down the hatches and prepare for another wave of United attack. But he was clever. He put his foot on the ball. He'd pass it to someone. He'd pick someone out. And he just gave us that little bit of breathing time and a chance to kind of get our foot on the ball and control things again. Again, as I say, I thought generally the game bypassed him. And I think he's got to do better. And I think that Man United deliberately played in a certain way that bypassed our midfield. And Ruben Amorim was very, very clever there. Very, very clever, because he looked at our midfield. He looked at his own midfield and he went, we can't win that battle. So let's play around them. And he knew where Calafiori was going to be. He knew that Calafiori was going to do all sorts of crazy things in terms of his positioning. He knew that that would leave us with a back three. He knew that we'd have to be narrow in order for that back three to be connected and to kind of manage the spaces really, really well. And so he went down the sides of us, and it really, really did work. Zubimendi, not great, though. Declan Rice was poor by his very, very high standards yesterday, in my opinion. Again, it's a tactical thing. Again, it's to do with the way that Amorim, I thought, navigated around our midfield as to why he wasn't as involved. But he didn't look 100% fit as well. No concerns about either of those two players, because you know that they're brilliant. You know that they're fantastic. You know that they'll find their feet. But they weren't at their best yesterday, fair to say. Martinelli, incredibly frustrating again. And that performance from him, and then the ineffectiveness, albeit from Noni Madueke a little bit later on in the game. I know that he was predominantly there to do a job defensively. That's what he was forced to do as we were defending the 1-0 lead. But people will look at that game yesterday. They'll look at Martinelli. They'll look at Madueke, and they'll say, we still need something on that left-hand side. And I agree with that. That's why the news that we got over the course of the weekend that Eberechi Eze is closing in on a move to Tottenham was very, very disappointing. Bukayo Saka, I didn't think he was effective. I didn't think he was good yesterday. Always runs hard, always works hard, always offers you an outlet. But did he make enough of the situations that he found himself in? Not for me yesterday. So he was below par as well. I thought we used the subs well. I thought the subs were key to us seeing out the game. We've got far better depth, far better quality. We didn't even have Christian Norgard or Max Dowman in the squad yesterday. And, you know, even still, the subs we brought on, Timber and Lewis Skelly, to replace our fullbacks, it doesn't get much better than that in terms of strength and depth. Mikel Merino, very experienced and competent operator, came in to replace Rice. Madueke came on the left-hand side, and Kai Havertz came on up front. You kind of felt it as soon as the team news came out when you saw the bench. Now we've got some strength and depth. We need players to stay fit. That's really, really important. But you feel more confident, don't you, about the squad right now. We still need one more. My opinion on that hasn't changed. I didn't see anything at Old Trafford to convince me that we have enough in attack just yet. I know there are players that should, in theory, improve. Viktor Gyökeres being one of them, Noni Madueke being another. Saka's form should improve. Martinelli should improve. Odegaard's form, I think, will improve again. But we're still missing one more in that attack for me. That's how I see it. And, you know, yes, people are going to be delighted with the result, but at the same time, you're right if you feel a bit of concern about the level of performance. I don't have a problem with people feeling that way. The result can mask a lot, and we've seen that a lot in football over the years. We've all followed it for a long time. We all know that that can happen. I think it's important to kind of highlight the positives, which were that we ground out a result at one of the most difficult places to go in the Premier League. Maybe not statistically, but for Arsenal, for the history of Arsenal, Manchester United, and for a team that were full of optimism and excitement with their new signings, and it's the new Ruben Amorim era. It's his first full season, etc., etc. The circumstances were tough. We went there, we won. We found a way, even when we weren't at our best. If you continue to see performances like that, then that concern is going to grow, and rightly so. But I do think you can put that down to a one-off first game of the season. Not quite sure where everyone's at. That's why those games are so difficult to predict, and you take the positive. I do think that Mikel Arteta, like, while he did highlight where we weren't good enough, and he did highlight that, you know, in a lot of areas we weren't at our normal standard, I did feel like he tried to paint a much more positive picture than what we saw. And I get that, you know, he wants to control the narrative. He wants to stir a certain emotion within the fan base. He wants to create a feeling of pride for what we've gone out there and got. But he will know as well as anybody else, and he might not say it publicly, but he will know as well as anybody else, this is not sustainable. This is just not sustainable. Arsenal have to be better. We have to go out and put on a show and win against Leeds next weekend. And if we do that, 6 points out of 6 with a good display in the bank, then I think people start to feel a little bit more positive and a little bit more optimistic about what the longer term looks like with regards to this season. So I'm not saying we were great. I'm saying I'm pleased that we won, but I've highlighted more issues than positives over the course of this podcast because I think that reflects the game from an Arsenal perspective. You take the win, you take the points, you move on, you're happy, etc., etc. But there's still loads to do. Right, we're going to take another really, really short pause. And when we come back, we're going to take your questions and your thoughts from the live chat. So get them in from now while we are waiting for you to get your thoughts and comments into the live chat box. Go over to the video, not the chat box, and hit that like button. It really, really does help. Subscribe as well to the channel if you haven't done so already and you're with us on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, leave us a review. That really, really, really does help. And of course, if you want to become a patron, we're kicking off our new format today. Go over to patreon.com/The Chronicles of Aguna. And the link is in the description for that one as well. Right. Short pause. When we come back, it's Q&A time. Okay, let's take some of your thoughts and comments from the live chat box. Imran Aleem says, has Harry touched on Martinelli? Shocking. Absolutely shocking. Yeah, I touched on Gabriel Martinelli, but if I sat here and analysed Gabriel Martinelli's performance, I don't think I'd be saying anything different to what I've been saying over the last few months. Lots of work rate, lots of effort, great application, but not enough quality. And that's been the case with Martinelli for quite some time. It's a big part of why people really feel and believe that we have this urgent need now to go out and bring in another left winger. I agree with that. But I'm not going to sit here and keep kicking the guy while he's down. He's clearly suffering from a dip in form. And what's the point in saying the same things over and over again? Manny says that United system will cause all the big teams problems because they will give up space for United to run. I agree with that. They've got runners now, which, they've got with the wing backs that Amarim's managed to bring in. Dorgu on that left-hand side. Ahmad really, really good as well when he's fit and available. Dalot can do a job too. I agree with you. If they play around the teams that are, very central in terms of the way they focus their play, like us, they'll find a way. Dayspring says the team did well winning the game. Arteta was honest enough about our deficiencies, though, during the on-field interview. Yeah, he is honest, but he's always going to play up the positives, as he should. As a manager, you should, because you want your players to believe, you want the fans on side, etc., etc. But I think that when you watch the game, you certainly take away more. I called them action points on the reaction I did from Old Trafford yesterday than you do sort of things to be very, very pleased by or pleased with. Reese says, have to disagree with the Odegaard stuff. He was poor, in my opinion. Sorry. No, my point was not that this was vintage Martin Odegaard and that it was back to his brilliant best. My point was that if you're going to have a go at an individual or a group of individuals, and you're going to pin the fact that we were really, really toothless in the attack on anybody, I don't think Odegaard's the one that you should go after first. Did he get some passes wrong? Yeah, but guess what? He's the only one trying to play that killer blockbuster pass. If you go back, and I've made this point before, but it's so relevant. If you go back to the Alexis Sanchez days at Arsenal, we'd all say at that point that he was the best player that Arsenal had at that point and at that time. Don't dispute that for a second. But I used to get annoyed when people used to go, yeah, but look how much he gives the ball away. Like when it became apparent that he wasn't going to stay and he was going to leave, there was this kind of like online onslaught of people going, yeah, but he's not that good anyway because he gives the ball away loads. Look at the stats. And this is a classic example of where stats can be misleading and stats don't tell you the full picture. If you are trying the difficult, potentially high reward passes, you're going to get them wrong at times. They're not all going to come off. And therefore, your stats are going to look worse and all the rest of it. But I don't think he was the issue. Stephen Bernard says, you mentioned in pre-season about that Calafiori-Martinelli partnership. and that was a possible left-sided solution. Was this just the wrong game to try it in? I think to a degree it was, but I think it's because I think we got caught out by Man United's approach. I don't think we anticipated them playing around us the way that they did. And I think we had to adjust in the second half, and we did things better. We won the game, and one of those two players that was picked on the left side scored the winner. So it's very hard for me to sit here and go, yeah, it was completely wrong. But I do think, yeah, it upset the balance a little bit. It did. What else have we got? Just rolling through the chat. Rumble says, Harry, would you take Wissa from Brentford? I know it doesn't sound glamorous, but a good enough addition who I think has enough goals in him to help us win the Premier League this season. I like Johan Wissa. Would he play from the left, though? I don't know. I don't know about that. I like Johan Wissa, but if I'm honest, when we were talking about a left winger earlier on in the transfer window, I was aiming a bit higher. Like I was hoping for better. Would I be upset if we signed Johan Wissa? No, but it's not really one that massively inspires me, to be honest. Although it would be funny if we took another player from underneath Newcastle United's nose, because everybody seems to be doing that this summer. Andrew Mafia says, happy belated birthday, Harry. Any baby news? Thank you very much, mate. And thank you for all the birthday wishes. It was my birthday on Saturday. Really, really appreciate all the love and great comments that I've had. Any baby news? Not yet. The good news is that it didn't happen while I was up in Manchester. Don't have any long trips now for a couple of weeks, so hopefully we'll be all right. Andrew says, Zubi found Odegaard in the pocket quite a few times yesterday. Do you feel the building blocks for a change in build-up are there? Yeah, I do. But again, it's something new. It's something different. Like Zubimendi plays that role very different to Partey. Zubimendi gets the ball on the edge of your box, and Zubimendi wants to play a sort of vertical pass straight through the line and into the likes of Odegaard. Whereas Thomas Partey always tended, I think, to look for the wide area as quick as possible. And if Odegaard would peel out there, he might get the ball. If Saka was out there in space, he would get the ball nice and early. So they're both very good at getting the ball forward early, but they go through different routes. Partey used to go wide first and foremost, I feel. And Zubimendi used to go or prefers to go vertically through the midfield. So it's just something different, and it's going to take time for us to adjust. Martin says, do you actually think we'll make an attacking signing? And if we don't, where do you think we'll finish this season? I think we'll be cooked. I mean, what does cooked mean? Like, and I'm not having a go, Martin. I'm just asking the question. What does cooked mean? Like, does it mean we finish 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th? Like, what does cooked mean? Or does finishing second mean that we're cooked these days? I don't know. I really don't understand. I just, do I think we'll make an attacking signing? I'd like to think that we will. I think we will. Who it will be, I have no idea. And if we don't, I'll be as vocal and as frustrated as anybody else, because I really do believe, and I've been consistent on this, that we need one more. Afsar says, are you not concerned with Gyökeres? We're simply not supplying the ball through for him to score. Same old problem. Look, if we get a month, 2 months into the season and we're still seeing the same thing, then I think I will be concerned. But this idea that Viktor Gyökeres was just going to come in and score 40 goals, like just like that, it was very far-fetched. Callum Morrison says, would you agree that it's good to get these fixtures out of the way early in the season? United, Liverpool, Newcastle, especially if we get results, since we are fully fit, no injuries, and despite some cobwebs. Yeah, if you get the results, for sure. And like, even if you don't get the results, like you hope that you do. Like, I would absolutely take a draw at Liverpool. I would absolutely take a draw at Newcastle. And the fact that we've won at Old Trafford means that that's okay. If we had lost at Old Trafford, then you're starting to look at those games and you're going, we need to win those. I think at this stage in the season, draws are fine. Don't let these teams, get one up on you. Yes, at the end of the season, if you end up, like losing a game or winning a game and putting a bit of distance between yourselves, good way or bad way, it's not the end of the world. I just think you want to stay in touch while you're finding your feet and while you're building up to your best. What else have we got in the live chat? Big hello to everybody joining us, because there's loads and loads of you with us this morning, which is fantastic. People asking me if I'm going to name my kid Thierry Symeou. It's a girl, so I don't think that's going to work. And I don't think the wife would approve of that either, to be honest. I used to have a family dog called Thierry, by the way. Yeah. Poor old dog. It's no longer with us. Sad times. Anyway, look, let me take one or two more, and then we're going to sign out. But just while I'm waiting for the chat box to populate that little bit further, don't forget to leave a like on the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Can we make that 45k mark ASAP? That would be amazing. That would be amazing. Ash says, why won't she approve? Thierry's a great name. It's not a girl's name, though, is it? Tierra? Like, is there a female version? I don't know. But listen, I'm not going to put up a fight to call my daughter Thierry. It's not going to happen. Right. Martin Williams, just in response to what I asked him, he says, second and no trophies cooked for us. What are you judging attacking midfielders' performances on? Losing the ball is inevitable, but not creating any clear-cut opportunities can't be okay, can it? No, and it's not okay. But my point was never that Odegaard was brilliant. My point was that Odegaard was not the issue yesterday. Like, if everything else was functioning brilliantly and every time the ball went to Martin Odegaard, things broke down, I'd go, yeah, you know what? He was the problem. But he wasn't. I'm not afraid to criticize him. A lot's been made of me saying last week that if it were up to me and the slate were wiped clean, he wouldn't be my captain. I don't think he's a big problem or there's an issue to the point where we should strip him of the captaincy. But if I could wipe the slate clean and I wasn't going to have that problem of, stripping it from someone, I don't think I would have picked him. Wouldn't have picked him at the time either. I'm fine with criticizing him. I just think that because there's expectation around him, because he wears that armband, we're very, very quick to pile in on him when we don't play very well. But I just think there were much worse performers on the day than Martin Odegaard. That was my point around him. Archangel says, how about Lanesra? That is fantastic, that story. The guy that named his kid Lanesra. His wife said, what a beautiful name, only to realize later down the line that it was Arsenal spelt backwards. Arsenal Avenger says, Henrietta, loved it. Jermaine says he's got a friend who named her daughter Thierry. Interesting. I've never heard of a female named Thierry, so I wouldn't have even considered that. Tierella is a good one. I'm going to tell my wife about these. She's going to be thrilled. Christoph, just talking about Odegaard, and this is a really valid point. Creating a chance also relies on other attackers making effective runs. It's not the sole responsibility of the defender, of the player, I beg your pardon, delivering the pass. Completely agree. Jid says, don't you think there is a new hate watch movement for Martinelli? Whole team plays subpar, yet we dedicate time to say Martinelli again. Why is there a desperation to scapegoat him? That's not true with everyone. I think he's clearly a player that we could improve on. Bukayo Saka wasn't great yesterday either, and I've made the point of saying that so that we're fair and balanced in the analysis. But I do think that we could upgrade on Gabriel Martinelli. I have no problem with people criticizing him, but I do think that you are right. There is this narrative around him right now that means unless he goes out and scores every week, there's always going to be those question marks. And I think a bit like what I've been kind of defending Martin Odegaard for today, when the team doesn't function very well and there are multiple factors and reasons for that, of which one of them might be what Gabriel Martinelli's doing, or in this case, yesterday, what Martin Odegaard's doing, there will be that tendency because of those preconceptions and those narratives to go after those players and to go after them first. And that in turn shields the rest of the players that didn't do what they were supposed to or didn't play at the level required from the criticism, because the preconception and the pre-existing narrative takes over. It's not a hate watch in my case. I want to see Martinelli thrive. I want to see him succeed. I think he's a real, hard-working and really humble and great young man to have around the place, but he does need to do better. There's no question about that. Right, we are going to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining in. Really, really do appreciate you all being with me in the live chat. Remember, our new Patreon piece will be out within the next hour and a half. So stay tuned for that one. Check it out. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. I'd love to get your feedback. Those of you that are existing patrons, new patrons as well, go over, check it out. The new feature for the new season. Really, really looking forward to sharing it with you. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe. In summary, a shit house of a win, but a win nonetheless. And a win at Old Trafford should never be sniffed at. I think this highlighted the need for Arsenal to go out and bring in one more attacking signing. People will argue that we're going to click and things are going to get better, and therefore we might not need that player. But I've been pretty consistent in saying that. So nothing I saw yesterday changed my mind on that. Let's put it that way. But look, victory at Old Trafford, first win of the season in the bag, first game out of the way. There'll be lots of fallout. There'll be lots of analysis. We'll be continuing our analysis over on patreon.com/Chronicles of Aguna. Check it out, and I'll see you all soon. Until the next one, take care of yourselves and have a wonderful day. Goodbye.